Brilliant. So, hello. Like I said, I'm Adam Duffield. I'm the subject librarian for nursing over in UCLan, but as I'm sure, like a lot of you, I do wear a lot of different hats, like copyright and keeping an eye on how AI has been developing in our space. So, by the end of my short demonstration, I'm hoping you should be able to see the kind of three key ways AI is blending fact and fiction: manipulation, hallucination, and fabrication. But also importantly, well, how do we actually tackle this with our users? To start with, just very briefly, AI is currently experiencing a developmental boom, and it's been the case for a long time. This example I've got up here was the same prompt on the same engine a year apart, just to create an image of a woman. And even that's outdated now, that's a year old, so I need to find a better English, but that's just how quickly and how fast it's developing. And I always kind of describe it as kind of like eternally being in the eye of the storm, constantly trying to get our footing, as every day it seems like something else is changing. In fact, I did make a last-minute addition to this PowerPoint because of a news story that broke just last week. That's how fast things are going. Now, why does this matter for us? Obviously, AI in higher education has become a hot topic, seen through a number of talks and presentations, including all the ones today. Not to mention the extensive media and news coverage. It's a fast-moving field, and things are constantly in motion. From the kind of talks and the information I've been looking at, as a university, we kind of synthesized a few common reoccurring themes. That is, AI is advancing faster than institutions maybe can keep up with. AI is at a point where it's superficially convincing, but should be easily flagged. AI is being met with an element of alarmism by some people, and students might have a notion of what AI does, but they don't seem to have a full understanding of how it works. In regards to that, and in regards to staying up to date, it's also important to understand how its use has changed. AI is not just more advanced, but it's more widely used today than ever before. We're also finding that there's a bit of a grandfathered effect, where we might be getting better at detecting it at a HE level, but students are coming to us having gotten used to using it at FE, where it's a bit easier to mask the use. It's also bad for a number of reasons, not least of which being how it's the worst time to get caught using it. Students are being made public examples of to try and ward people away from it. And while there obviously should be some punishment in part, I don't think that's enough of a deterrent by itself. As we saw from the last slide, students are still using it, and that raises the question of why. If we look at what the research is telling us, students that perform well are actually more likely to use it. There are a significant number of students unaware of the potential for hallucinations, made-up information, manipulation, and inaccuracies. And interestingly, the number caught cheating has risen, just how they have been cheating, representing the age-old driving forces of, stress, lack of confidence, lack of understanding. As such, I always think that the solution shouldn't just be in punishing or in putting people off, but in demystifying it as a technology. That to know it in itself is a deterrent. So from asking our students, kind of anonymously, why they want to use AI, we kind of synthesized what the appeal seems to be. Can save time, like writing a piece of work for you. Produces high quality work that you are capable of. Will avoid common formatting issues and other mistakes created by human error. As a machine, it'll be unbiased. Can pull from a wide range of sources from its information banks. And as a machine, it's going to be the most up-to-date of developments. And interestingly, by outlining the appeals of using AI, we can see that they are exactly the same as the myths of using AI. Not entirely true. Everything that students seemingly think AI is worth risking it for, it's not actually doing it. Again, it's that idea of coming to AI from a place of ignorance, which kind of segues great into what I think might be the biggest trick AI is kind of being played on the public, the greatest bit of fiction. And that's the question, how smart is AI? And the answer might be, it's not. But that's not even the case either. It doesn't have the capacity to be smart or beat them. When students hear the term AI, they might think of fiction like iRobot or Astro Boy. It's not the case. It's not something that can think or make decisions. And I find, in particular, AI can't create from scratch. It analyzes a bunch of information, it finds the patterns, kind of munches them up, and it spits them back out. In this sense, it doesn't create, it just regurgitates. On the left, there's a very famous photograph from a war photographer called The Afghan Girl. On the right was an image I asked, saying, can you create an image of an Afghan girl? And obviously, it's not created that by itself. So on top of the issues of being caught using it or cheating and quality, you also have to factor in the idea of plagiarism. And this is stuff, obviously, that can get easily picked up on. Speaking of being abreast of development and issues in AI, this story actually broke not long ago along the same lines. There was a company, they wanted to make their own Pokemon type game, and to do it they thought, well, we can use AI to make the monster designs. Since they'll create them from scratch, they'll save us a lot of money and time. So, you can see a game came out, it does extremely well. However, as we know, AI can't create designs, and it didn't. It just stole patents from the sources, mostly Pokemon. So now they actually are facing legal action for plagiarism. As you can see here, it's just taken the patents and it's spat them back out again. Like the picture of the Afghan woman, this has been a great example to user students, because it actually visualizes what AI's done when it hands them some work. And again, this idea of demystifying and making it a bit less ethereal. Has anyone ever used Canva before? Yeah, I'm quite a big fan. I think it's quite a really good thing for making, business cards, posters, or anything. Quite recently, they've started implementing AI tools, and this idea of manipulating images has come in because it's lowered the bar for image editing. I don't have quite time to actually demonstrate it, but it's called Magic Edit, and the way it works is, say you've got two pictures, you can just select parts of an image and tell it what to change. So you could highlight the man's hair and say, make it a different colour. You could highlight the apple and say, can you turn this into a stone? And even if it takes a couple of tries, it actually can do it quite well. So again, it's this idea that not only can AI manipulate, but there are some good uses for it. It does lower the entry level for it, but it does mean that lying about images or tweaking them is easier than ever before. And all of that, the way it creates is an example of how AI is simply manipulating and reworking pre-existing material. Though that doesn't mean it's always easy to spot. These, we've all seen kind of memes of the images with the weird hands or like something not quite right that gives it away. This is like a little game I play with users. It's like a minute-long video. And what I do is it's just a very short video of a series of real images with a few AI ones sprinkled in. And if you want to just play along, just when you see one come up that you think's been made by AI, just yell out AI and see if you you can actually pass the test. So again, it's just this idea of visually what's being done here. I often get a lot of comments about that game, actually. They say it's not fair, because it's not enough time to look, but that's kind of the idea. Let me just get my PowerPoint back up. You can see those errors when you're looking for them, when you're scrutinizing the image, but when you're flicking through a newsfeed or looking on Twitter or whatever, you spend 2 seconds, if not less, looking at these images. I believed that image of the Pope's coat for like a good week or so, because I just saw it and I just assumed he had a big coat at one point, you know? And it's embedded. There's a bit of misinformation just kind of lodged in my brain, and I wouldn't have known if I didn't look into it. Moving on, I'm sure we're all aware of ChatGPT. I won't bother demonstrating it, we're all quite familiar with what it does. But in essence, you give it a request, and then it can give you back text based on what you asked it to do. So again, it's this idea of, we can say, don't use this, don't use this, don't use this, but they're always going to be kind of like tempted. So a task I often do with students is I actually get them to use it in a session. I say, okay, actually try to get it to write an undergraduate level essay about a certain topic, and then we'll go through it together to see whether it's actually able to make a passable level or an acceptable level of work to hand in. Before I can actually go over it, there's an obvious one. Can anyone see what the obvious mistake it's made immediately? Has it done what I asked it to? It's not an essay to begin with, it's written me a list. That's a very common thing with ChatGPT. I like to tell them, it's not drawing just from academic papers, it's drawing a lot from websites and blogs and news sites, and that's more likely going to be what influences the text they give you. But we also go over the major red flags, the ways that, you know, you're going to get caught. Repeats part of the question word for word. It won't give evidence when it's expected to. The argument, it's going to do it at a simple level, not undergraduate level or above. And there's a really weird kind of thing it's got right now, where the AI thinks that a good argument is to spend half the time arguing for something, and then say the complete opposite is true, and then spend the rest of it disproving themselves. So these are all kind of things that, you know, we can keep an eye on. And while it's also bad when it doesn't give evidence, it's even worse when it does, because it'll just make them up. These are actual real authors, but the paper title is fake. The journal's real, but there's no paper like this in that journal. And I think it's that, again, it's that 1-2 punch of being most effective. Yes, again, punished is scary, but if they understand what's actually happening with it, the temptation is, in theory, drastically hit. But again, that's what we mean when we talk about hallucinations. While AI can't create, it will manipulate content, and when it sees gaps, it will just kind of insert what it can to get from A to B. Ironically, being the only original work it does produce almost always being made up. But as I just stopped at chat and pictures, let's see how I do. Here's another clip. And it's similar to the other one I do, but again, I show them a couple of videos, and I see if they can tell me which ones have been edited or altered with AI. And I like to use Shining because for the younger ones, they haven't seen it, so they might not usually get
what should be done with him.
That's not the right actor. But if you didn't know Jim Carrey wasn't in The Shining, it's quite convincing.
I don't think that's true. I think you have some very different ideas about what should be done with Danny, and I'd like to know what they are.
And for reference as well, that video is 8 years old. So it's not even cutting edge. It's something AI's been able to do for a while. PowerPoint. And that actually takes me to the next step, where I talk about, well, it's not just you, the users, who are being, using it to be, creating fake information or trying to trick examiners or whatever. It's also being used to trick you, because, well, it's all good fun when it's done to replace actors and make funny videos in the film. Obviously, if you can do it with film, you can also do it within the news.
came out of nowhere. What we subsequently learned is it may have come from the former president or his little team acting in bad faith. This is a deepfake example of what is possible with powerful computer and editing. It took around 72 hours to create this example from scratch using extremely powerful GPU. It could be improved with more computing time, but 90% of people cannot tell the difference.
So that's not as good as the Jim Carrey. You can actually notice that the lips, they're not quite moving right. But again, if you think about how you interact with news stories and clips, even this old example, you could see how someone would quickly see it, not think about it, and again, that misinformation, that fiction, kind of gets locked away, and they don't think about it anymore. Oh, what is it? That brings us to the extra thing I added. This is just recently taken off in the last week or two. AI is able to edit images, make images, edit video. It's also got to the point now where it can create songs. And this is quite a big site now that's been getting a lot of attention called Suno. If I just drag that over. You're able to just type in what kind of song you want to make it. You can even type in your lyrics. Let's say, write me a blues song. Just get it to do that. Now, I bring this one up because it's that idea of the manipulation and the fabrication. Just like all manipulated videos, this is like the fake news being spread. One example would be this account called Obscurest Vinyl. It got a lot of attention for supposedly being a collector of forgotten, bizarre songs. Got a bit of media attention before people cottoned on that he was just making them all with AI. And like with the Pokemon clone, questions have arisen over whether the manipulation of other songs counts as infringement, and they are, as of last week, being taken to court. And again, tying it into just visualizing it for the users. Let me just see if it's maybe that something you can see how believable it can be. There you go. Something I'd listen to, but again, if you're not scrutinizing it, if you're not thinking about it, it's quite believable, isn't it? When you look at all those finished pieces, these video essays, songs, they all content fabricated by AI to create misinformation, and they lead to the fake news stories, which leads to fiction being believed as fact. So all those examples hopefully illustrate the three major ways AI is muddying the water: manipulating content, hallucinating fake information, and fabricating original work. You might also have noticed that these three things are tied into each other. They feed into each other. Take the AI music, it didn't create the song, it manipulated other songs, which led to a fabricated story that they were lost vinyls. In academia, manipulating other people's work with hallucinated references and tags to create fabricated essays. That brings us to our last section, which is how do we tackle this? As I said, I've always seen as informing the same as warning, that knowing AI is the best deterrent to it, and that's how we've approached structuring sessions we conduct on it. Demonstration, analysis, and again, demystification. This steeps over into sessions we deliver on misinformation in general, and take users through the scale of the 7 pillars of mis and disinformation, which goes from generally harmless, maybe something you're only meant to believe is real for a second as a joke, all the way over to quite malicious, which is manipulated content to try and trick you, or fabricated content to purposely spread misunderstanding. And what we see is not just in the ones we just looked at, but AI is scattered all across this, this scale. You can find examples of AI having its hands in every single type of misinformation. So a common task I would conduct with the users is this game of sorting trustworthy information from untrustworthy information, real from fake. Depending on the group, I even dress this up as a kind of Sherlock Holmes investigation task, like we're examining and scrutinizing clues. And it includes the usual stuff, fake information, clickbait, satire, and so on. But of course, we also spend time on AI. Can anyone tell me which of these two stories, I can't quite read it, but from the titles, which one of these is AI generated? Any guesses? Bruno Mars? It's both. A little trick. But here I'm highlighting how much murkier the waters have gotten. It's easy to look at, does rumour come out, does Bruno Mars' game go, that's clearly not written by a human. But the other one isn't either. You can see here that they are, again, you can't quite read it, but what it's doing, the machine is putting in as many key terms as possible to raise up in the SEO. Now what the SEO is, just very, very briefly, but it's how websites get ranked and how they get recommended to you on Google. It's not as impartial as I might want you to believe. And again, I can talk you through all of it, but the one we're interested in is number 2, which is where a search engine robot goes over the page and gives it a star, and then that's how high it ranks. With AI-generated articles, all it is 2 robots talking to each other, one giving the other what it wants, so it gets spread easier. And while this one on the left is super easy to tell, this one's also had a human element added. You can't quite make it out, but that's abcnews.com.com. So they're adding an element there to try and make it as convincing as possible, to be as malicious as possible. And again, AI's helping do this, gets the stories out quickly, make sure they get to the top of the page. Of course, we don't just talk about users. I run sessions aimed at educating staff on the development and issues with the AI. My school often liaises with me when they think a student may be using it. And while it's not my place to concretely condemn them or state, that they are doing it, I use this checklist I've made with the common red flags, and I just kind of say, in my opinion, my professional opinion, it's possible and needs to be taken further or not, although it tends to be that it is the case. There's also an AI software in development I'm keeping an eye on. It's meant to be able to detect for you if AI is being used, and a lot of institutions are beginning to use it. I personally don't think it's good enough yet. In particular with historical or legalese, it kind of gets a bit confused. On the right is it saying that the US Constitution is 92% AI generated, so one can dream. If we get it working, then it'll be a pretty good example of walking the tightrope, using AI ethically to catch unethical uses of AI. And just very, very, very briefly, I almost feel a bit like, a preacher up here, bemoaning the evils of AI, and there are a lot of negatives we can spend all day doing. But I always make a point to highlight the positives. Q&A chat box, automation of mindless tasks, translation, idea generation. I find it's really good for helping with choice paralysis. The users who don't know how to get started, they look at a blank page and they just freeze. You can ask ChatGPT, what could be potential titles for a study on this or that, and they'll give you some ideas. And that way is where we kind of draw the line in the sand. If it's being used for accessibility rather than being used to push fiction. So in conclusion, all that is a formed our approach to AI. We've done and why we do it. As mentioned, we make a big effort to stay abreast of developments because they're happening every day. We increase awareness through ethics, information literacy sessions, trustworthy news, AI sessions. We're constantly just trying to feed back to them. And we also work with academics just to make sure that AI is understood. Because if it's understood, then that line becomes a lot clearer. I don't know whether we have much time left for questions, but if you do have any for me, obviously always email me. I'm happy to talk about this or discuss the topic. But I hope there was something interesting there for you.